Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I am your host, Megan, and my amazing co-host is, well, maybe a little less amazing today. She's not feeling the best, but my still amazing co-host is...
Hi, I'm Amanda.
There you go, sniffles and all. We are your source for messy, imperfect homeschool advice and support. And we're back with brand new content this week. Hip, hip, hooray! Last week, we aired some vintage Homeschool Moms Unfiltered content about goal setting and vision boards because Amanda was away and I was left to my own devices. And if you leave me to my own devices, we will be talking about goal setting and vision boarding. So yeah, but we're back.
Oh no, I missed goal setting and vision boarding. I'm so sad.
Well, the good news is you can go back in the queue and just revisit last week's episode. So don't be sad.
Yeah, I'll get right on that. Or maybe not. Right. So like, if you're a longtime listener, you know that is like so not my jam. But Megan is all about it. And I'm happy to let her go on with their bad self. She definitely lets me talk curriculum all I want, even though she breaks out in hives when she has to think about even looking through curriculum. Right. So it is what it is. That's what makes the podcast so much fun. In some ways, we're totally in sync, and in other ways, we homeschool and live very, very differently. But I'm back from family vacation. I'm back with like a pretty nasty cold. So excuse the funny sounding voice. Well, I can't really hear myself that well, but I think I sound funny. So we'll see. But yeah, lots to talk about, lots to catch up on. And we've got our regular podcast to do today. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It feels good to be back to our regular routine, our podcasting routine. I mean, maybe you're not so happy to be back in the US. I don't know. Did you consider defecting while you were in Indonesia?
I don't know about while in Indonesia specifically, but I will say it's tempting these days. I am definitely part of that 40% of American women who would like to move outside of the US, according to that most recent poll that everyone's talking about. If you're new to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered, we are a secular and progressive podcast. So it likely goes without saying that we are watching events like ICE raids in North Carolina and, oh, I don't know, calls for elected officials to be hung with like a really sickening sense of dread. Right? Here we are. Yay!
I
America, land of
just...
the free.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a video the other day. I'm hoping you just got to disconnect from the news a little bit while you were traveling, but so maybe you haven't seen it, but there was a news the other day of this group of moms in North Carolina who had formed a group where you could ask them to pick up your children from the school bus and they would help get them home safely so that you didn't have to risk going to the bus stop and being kidnapped by ICE, since that's one of their favorite haunts to go terrorize people. And so, like, on the one hand, I mean, I loved the video because I love to see people helping their neighbors. I love to see white women who are using their privilege in this way. But on the other hand, like, what the actual fuck is happening? You know, it's just...
Yeah, we did disconnect a bit. We made real efforts to not be online or on our phones, but I mean, like we still check in and post things. And also I feel like, you know, you have to disconnect sometimes and occasionally for your own mental health with the way that things are, and you have to find joy. But at the same time, I feel pretty strongly about still staying in touch with what's happening. So definitely we're not completely disconnected. And yeah, I mean, look, if you are watching democracy crumble with a knot of dread in your stomach, just know that you are not alone. You have unfortunately found your people. I don't mean that hopefully you would have found us no matter what, but it sort of sucks that you found us with a knot of dread in your stomach, right? But we shall strive to provide an hour of disassociation, or maybe just distraction if you prefer, though I'm all about disassociation. Hello, werewolf smut. While we chat, right, about homeschooling and neurodivergent kiddos today. So let's get ready to dig in. But first, we try to start every episode with like just a general weekly update recap. It's part of our anti-influencer. We try to keep it real around here. We don't want anyone walking away thinking like, oh, they totally have their shit together and everything is rainbows and sunshines and unicorns. If our unicorns do fart rainbow glitter, we're the ones cleaning up the glitter, and nobody likes cleaning up glitter, right? So I'm excited because we didn't actually talk much while I was gone. Like I said, I was pretty offline, and I told Meagan beforehand, like, look, I will get on for the lives that we do in our Patreon. I'll do my best to make sure that I'm there for anything that folks are actually paying for on the back end. But other than that, like, I'm not here. You don't have a business partner for the next 3 weeks. Good luck. So I'm excited to hear. I did touch base with you. Your pop up went well, but otherwise, how have things been?
Busy, but good. So we still have pop-up people in town. If you're not familiar with a pop-up, it's like a really small 1 week world schooling hub, but a lot of people tack on weeks at the beginning or after. So even like Friday night, we had, oh my gosh, we went to a cafe for board game night and we were just adding tables and tables and tables. I mean, we had like more than half the tables at this cafe strung together by the time we were done. And the kids were playing chess and Uno and Kings on a Corner and all kinds of stuff. So that was nice. And then yesterday, we met up with some pop up friends. There's a place that does €1 tacos every day from 6 to 7. So we went there and we did €1 tacos. So yeah, it was good. We met some really lovely people and all that good stuff. So it's nice, kind of, it's a lower key version now because there's still people here, but we're not doing stuff all day, every day. So it's just kind of a more casual approach to socializing than the pop up week, which was good. Yeah, my husband is here. He got here Thursday, I think. The days. I never know what day it is. I think Thursday. So again, if you're new, my husband works in another country and the kids and I live in Portugal and then he's in Aruba, which is his home country, and he works there and has a business and family stuff going on over there and whatnot. But Aruba is lovely and amazing and you should all go visit, but it's the size of a postage stamp. So to put 3 teenagers there full time wasn't really our vision. So we do kind of a split thing. So he's here, which is nice. I alluded to the fact a couple of weeks ago that we had some like serious shit going on in the family, like family emergency level stuff that we talk about the fact on the podcast, like we share like our full messy lives. This one is not mine to share. So it's not up to me. It's one of my kids. And so that is not going to be shared. But yeah, after 6 weeks of a lot of really heavy parenting, I was really happy when he showed up just to have another grown up in the house and like another sounding board. My mom lives here and stuff, but he's just like, he's a really calm human. So it was nice when he showed up. There's been a lot going on. Yeah. My daughter has decided that she, quote unquote, wants to go to school, which is interesting. She's 16 and a half. So that's like a really unique time to be like, I'm going to go to school, especially when you have a 2 year degree already. She already has an associate's degree. But really, she didn't want to go to school. Really, she wanted a set schedule and she wanted to see other people on the regular, more so than just kind of like, homeschool hangouts where sometimes some people are there and other times other people are there. She wanted a set group. And so we've been working on that. We did so many school tours for alternative schools here. I even found a forest school here for teenagers. Like I've never come across a forest school for teenagers in my life. So yeah, so she's got some stuff in place, which is exciting. She is starting one program this year, December 1st, that is again, not traditional school. She's going to be doing intensive Portuguese classes 5 days a week for hours and hours every day in preparation for entering a higher education program next year, where the courses are taught dual language, but the socialization is all going to be in Portuguese. So it was like, if you want to go there and be part of the community and make friends, and so you're going to need some hefty Portuguese and you're under your belt there, girlfriend. So yeah, so she's doing that. She starts in a week, which is exciting. So yeah, it's just been busy. We just got back from seeing Wicked for good. I thought it was okay. Like, sorry, don't come for me. I thought it was pretty good. Ariana Grande had a pink dress on at the end that was to die for. But other than that, it was just kind of like, I thought it was good. It was worth seeing. I was okay with that. So yeah, just busy, just like the usual, but busy. So anyway, yours has got to be way more fun, right? How was Indonesia?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to preface by saying that we try to keep it real, right? So it was like equal parts amazing and equal parts challenging. Indonesia was incredible. We had a great time. We stayed in 3 different places. We started out at kind of a beach resort. We specifically were there so that we could relax. And I knew with all of my chronic health conditions that I would need some extra time to be able to adjust and, just kind of get my feet under me and get a good rhythm for the family so we could enjoy the rest of our time. And we were away for a long time. It was a long family vacation because I knew I would need that time for us to be able
Hmm.
to actually like really enjoy ourselves. And so that part of it worked out well. Then we had a random one night stay in an airplane, which was really cool. It's a converted it was a 727. I don't remember for sure. I took a picture, but that's not really my thing. It was for my kiddo. So that was cool. And then we finished off at a hotel that's kind of in the jungle where we had like monkeys in the yard and like trying to break into the room. Like you literally at one point they could see crackers through the window and this monkey had his hands on the window, like trying to push the window open. Like we had locked it because they had forewarned us. But that was a really, cool experience. We spent like an hour just watching the monkeys do their thing. And, we took some tours. We met several different local guides and had some really great conversations. And it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful country. They say they have too many temples to count. And that's probably true because like every family compound has a temple and then every town has a temple. And then they're the important temples. And then there's the city temples and the regional temples and the ones that the royal family uses. And then the even more like special one, like there's like the temples just go on and on and on. So we did a lot of
Okay.
different temple tours. Go
I'm
ahead.
laughing a little bit though, because I kind of feel like that's what it's like to live in the Bible Belt, right? Like where you're like on every block there's a church. And when we lived there, I mean, we would be driving around and I'm like,
Yeah.
who even goes to all, you're in the middle of freaking nowhere and there's like 22
Yeah.
churches in the 10-mile stretch. I'm like, there's not even enough houses for people at each church every weekend. Like, I don't get it. So, sorry. It
Yeah.
just like a flashback to my time.
Yeah.
I lived in the Carolinas.
Yeah. 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 I mean, and it's that thing, we saw some different gates. For anyone who's listening and you're like, oh, that's amazing. There's this one gate that's super famous. It's called like Hadara's Gate or something like that. And it, you see the pictures of it everywhere. And it's this really dark, like black gate. And the reflection comes back like it's in front of a pool of water. And the guide was like, I'm happy to take you there. Lots of tourists go there. And it's kind of on this like loop where we go see these other temples and all of that. So it's no problem. I'm like, okay, great, cool. He's like, but I got to warn you that it doesn't look like that. And it's actually mirrors. Like they put a mirror under the camera. So you get that reflective effect. And I was like, are you serious? He was like, yeah, 100% serious. So we have both. We have like the regular picture and then like the famous picture with the mirror reflection. You pay like essentially 60 cents a person for them to take this special mirror photo. I was like, okay. So yeah, but at least that one, like most of the temples, like the gates that people do all the pictures in front of in Indonesia, they're actually like the entryway into the temples to keep out the bad spirits. And so there's a little bit of like hostility and negativity about the fact that they've become like the selfie spot when they actually
Mm-hmm.
have like important, significant religious connotation for people.
Yeah.
Whereas this one that's like super famous, it just goes into a golf course. So at least there's that, right? Like you don't feel nearly as bad about that. But yeah, so I mean, like I said, we met amazing people. We learned tons of things. It was beautiful. We watched Eat, Pray, Love, and then we
Oh,
went into that part of the country and we were like, wow, things really haven't changed in 20 years. Like there's not that much difference. So from that regard, it was great. I really struggled, right? I had some health things that came up while we were there that I was like, oh, that some of these things make me really uncomfortable. So as soon as we got back to the US, I went and saw my cardiologist and talked with him about some things. And he was just like, well, like you haven't been on a trip like this. And it's true. It took 30 hours of travel kind of each way to get there. So it's the
yeah.
first time that we've done that long on an airplane like that far since I developed POTS and long COVID and some of these other things. It's just like, that's just going to happen. And just make sure you're in air conditioning. Like that's not really easy to do in a country like Indonesia. Bali was amazing, but it's not all air conditioned. And, and like, oh, when you're in the room, just make sure you put on your compression leggings. And then when you go to leave, you can change into your compression bike shorts. And then, and like back and forth, like, oh, that's a lot of hot and sticky changing and like just a lot of extra clothing. Like, not going carry on only when you got to change clothes that many times a day and just, things. And then our second to last day, well, at our last hotel, we splurged and we had one of those little, like, kind of, we were in a hotel, but we had our own little, like, bungalow with a private, like, dip pool or plunge pool, is what they call them. And I heard my husband and my kiddo out playing, and there was lots of coughing and spluttering. And I was like, oh, I really hope he doesn't end up with Bali belly, which is like a whole thing. Thankfully, he did not. But then later that night and the next morning, he was talking about a sore throat. And I'm like, it's probably just because he drank like so much pool water and was like spitting it out, probably just irritated his throat and his sinuses. But no, we were not that lucky. He was sick. And then the next day, my husband's like, I'm, like a little sniffly and I have a sore throat. And that was when I was like, I don't think it was just from the pool. I think
Yeah.
they've managed to pick something up. And I managed to stay healthy through the trip. But by the time we got home, I was not so healthy. So they're mostly well. And now I just wait and see. Like, I'm one of those lucky people that, like, usually when it gets this bad, it turns into a secondary bacterial
Hmm.
infection of some sort. So now we're just waiting to see if it's going to finally clear up on its own or not. But I finally figured out there were a couple meds that were supposed to work that did not work. There were a couple miserable days there, but I finally found two different ones that seem like they're working. So I think we're going to get through the podcast okay. If not,
Gotcha.
I'll mute. We'll make the most of it.
Exactly. So, real quick, because you mentioned Eat, Pray, Love, I saw an interview with the author one time who wrote the book, the Eat, Pray, Love book. And she said she was coming through customs and they were doing their usual, like, what do you do? What's your profession? All that kind of stuff. And she says, I'm an author. And they're like, what have you written? Or what do you write? Or whatever. And she's like, well, I'm most known for this book, Eat, Pray, Love. And she said the customs agent yells all the way down the line of customs agents and they're like, you guys, it's the Eat, Pray, Love lady. Because they said all the time when people are coming through and they're like, why were you in Cambodia or why were you in Tanzania? They'll be like, oh, I was getting my Eat, Pray, Love on, and they're like, this is the Eat, Pray, Love lady, And I cracked up. I'm like, that's so funny because it has become like a singular verb to eat, pray, love, right? Not necessarily the three separate ones. So it's pretty funny. Yeah. So, well, I'm sorry you don't feel good, but I'm happy
Yeah.
you're back. So you were missed.
Oh, well, thank you. And yeah, it was good. Okay. So let's talk what we're actually here for. Today's podcast. We're going to be talking about why homeschooling is often, not always, but often a good solution for neurodivergent kids. If you're already homeschooling, this might just be a reminder, or it might be the gentle reassurance you need on a rough day. But we also know that we have tons of listeners who are considering homeschooling and they really struggle to picture what their journey might look like with their differently wired kiddo. You have the kiddo and you're struggling with them being in brick and mortar school, and you're like, I can't imagine bringing this home. That's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So let's kick off with some disclaimer stuff, right? Let's like kind of level set before we jump in. If your child going to school is your break and you're thinking, I know school is not working for my child, but I need that break. They are a lot. And now you want me to spend 24/7 with this child that is so much. So, a couple things. Number one, we don't judge you for that thought. We all need a break. We get it. Oh, we get it. Totally. When my youngest was little, my husband would come home from work and I'd be like, take him. And he'd be like, what do you want me to do with him? I'm like, I don't care. Just take him. I just need a break. So totally get it. Second point of this disclaimer is that the child that you have today in school is 99.999% not the child that you will be homeschooling. Okay. If your child is in an environment that does not serve them, their personality is going to change. The way they react to stress, the way they interact with family members, all of that stuff is going to change. It's like if you've ever met somebody who's in a really toxic marriage and then they split up and you bump into this person later and the person's glowing and they've taken up, knitting and they've traveled and they do yoga and all this kind of stuff, right? That's the difference between toxic marriage and happy single life. Okay. Same thing. School situation that's not working, homeschooling kid, two totally different kids. And so we have episodes on deschooling. We have an entire course that teaches you to get up and running in homeschooling called Homeschool 101, the No Panic Bootcamp. That talks about deschooling in even more depth, but you both need a break. You need to recover from this experience that's not been good, and your kiddo needs time to recover and heal. And you both need time to cut the cord to traditional education, figure out what serves you, figure out what doesn't. It's a whole process, but an important process. Okay. Next is that homeschooling does not mean 24/7 togetherness. Okay. I don't think any of us are really doing that. There's drop off programs. Your kids would still be participating in stuff, sports or activities at the library. They're still going to go hang out with friends. They're going to do things. You will get breaks. We promise you. Okay. They do exist. It is possible. And then lastly, just as part of our disclaimer statement, kind of tangentially, my brain, oh my God.
Tangent.
Good, it's not just me.
Yeah, that word.
Hold on. I say,
I
I'm
know.
asking Google to pronounce it. Hold
I
on.
know, but I'm saying just like, okay, you know what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I'm British or American? Let's see.
Tangentially.
Tangentially. Okay, we got it. Tangentially. Can you tell I write more than I speak sometimes and that I read more than I speak? I had seen a thing one time that said, like, never make fun of someone
Mhm.
for mispronouncing a word because it means they learned it through reading.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't make fun of somebody for mispronouncing a word anyway, but there you go. Case in point. Okay. Tangentially related. Got it. Tangentially related. We must acknowledge the fact that we understand that not everyone who wants to homeschool can homeschool. And there's many people in the homeschool community that are like, sure, just drive an older car and shop at Goodwill. If you're a single parent, if you're the one who provides health insurance, if you have no support system where you live, we get it. Not everyone can homeschool. It's a dream for some people. It isn't possible for everyone. And we get it. We acknowledge that we are very privileged to be able to homeschool our kids and take this action. So just full disclaimers before we jump into all the other stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My car is a 2008, and we are still incredibly privileged to be able to homeschool. Come on now. So before we dive in further, we just want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page about the concept or the idea, like what is neurodiversity? So some people refer to it as differently wired, and we did a whole series of podcast episodes on differently wired. It's a great book, and we talked through it. If you have a chance to read the book, you totally should. If you want to go listen to those old podcasts, I really encourage it, because that book for me was a huge eye opener in understanding all of the many different ways that a kiddo can be neurodiverse, and the importance of accepting the fact that, like, yeah, just fundamentally their brain is wired different and they're going to work differently. And you know, how you accept that and take that on, right? So this is everything from children who are on the spectrum to ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, DSM diagnoses of any type. It could be anxiety. It could be gifted. There's just tons and tons of things, right? But at the end of the day, it just means diversity. It's their brains are wired in a different way than what we typically consider, like, quote unquote normal, right? We try to avoid using that word for the most part, and we'll talk more about that. But just neurodiversity. And it is also important, we're going to talk a little about it now, but if you aren't super familiar with this idea, there are 100% neurodiverse forming educational options out there. And the importance of that is that they recognize, right, that a child's neurology is a difference. It's just a difference. It's not a deficit. And so neurodiverse affirming education takes into consideration, like, hey, this is a difference, and this is how we're going to work with that difference. Not, this is a difference and we're going to work really hard to make it not a difference. And so it's just important to keep those things in mind, first off, as we go into this conversation. And then second off, if you've got a kiddo that you're like, I really need this episode, those are some keywords that you should maybe Google to find some book recommendations or some extra things, or we do coaching on those things, you know, whatever, wherever it is, however you want to tackle that. But be aware of that and make sure that you're really doing your best to educate yourself and the rest of your parenting team on those words
Mhm.
and those kind of what those look like.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So, yeah, so our purpose in this episode is not to bash public schools or traditional schools, but really instead just look at it from the other side of the coin. Like, why are so many families of neurodivergent children turning to homeschooling? What benefits can homeschooling offer that is not commonly found in traditional education or public schools, and what systemic challenges exist in mainstream schooling that if you are new to the world of recognizing neurodivergence, understanding neurodivergence, you might not even realize your kid is battling in school all the time. And then that's why they come home the way they come home sometimes, right? Like their hair's on fire because they've been in
Mhm.
an environment like that throughout the day.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about that. Amanda brought up some books that we've done in the past. We did a huge series on Differently Wired. We were on that book for forever because we both loved that book. So there's a whole bunch of episodes on that. But way back in season 1, and then we reran it during season 3, Jonathan Mooney's book, Normal Sucks. And the biggest thing that I think that's there is that children who are not in a neurodivergent affirming environment indirectly receive messages that they are crazy, stupid, and lazy, in his words, that is what is wrong with you. And so having an environment for your children where their identity is affirmed as opposed to having them walk away feeling crazy, stupid, and lazy 5 days a week, 180 days a year, 6 hours a day, that's what we're after with this discussion. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick caveat. Every child is unique. Every school is different. And what works for one family may not work for another. This is a conversation, not plan that you have to follow. We're not judging. There's none of that going on. Okay? So everything is unique. Hopefully you get something helpful out of this conversation. And we're going to leave it at that as we dive in. Okay. So that said, what does neurodiversity affirming education actually look like? So this is going to be things like recognizing the child's strengths. That could be hyperfocus, pattern recognition. We talked about it before in the Jonathan Mooney thing, but like kids with dyslexia are often amazing at being able to like pull back. They usually make great team sports players because their ability to like pull back and see the whole picture and notice patterns really quickly, like way faster than you and I. They might be incredibly creative. They might be incredibly artsy. Their ability to think outside the box or make connections that you're like, I thought that was going to be the wrong answer until you explained to me how you got to that answer. And then, like, wow, now my mind is kind of blown and I can't believe I never thought of it that way. These things, like focusing on their strengths instead of only remediating the quote unquote deficits. That's one of the key tenets of neurodiverse affirming education. You're also going to have a flexible pace. That thing, like maybe you need to move slower, maybe you need to move faster, multiple modalities of learning. We'll probably talk about this a little bit more later on, but just this idea some kids love a lecture, some kids need hands on, some kids need both together at the same time. Sensory considerations, whether that's a kiddo who's moving. Maybe your kiddo is fine with a wiggly chair or a bicycle seat. Maybe you have a kiddo that can only pay attention and learn if they're rolling on the floor. And for you as the parent, you're like, how can they possibly be paying attention and learning while they're rolling on the floor? But that's what they need for their brain to be able to take it in. It could also be on the other end of it. Maybe they need quiet spaces. They need to be able to check out and go play solo on their own or just snuggle up with a blanket for a little while before they come back to take in more information. All of these kinds of things are going to be part of what a neurodiversity affirming education looks like.
mhm, yeah. And I think what I see, I'm in so many groups for parenting ADHD kids, autistic kids, and in school, it's, a wobbly thing on the chair, a pencil grip, right? There's like these like 6 standard things that get passed
Yeah.
out and it's like these are supposed to solve all your issues. And the reality is it goes so much deeper than,
Yeah.
that is like tip of the iceberg band-aid level situation, but that's what they're capable of. If you're watching on video, I have changed locations. Sorry, I had to move a little closer to the Wi-Fi router. So here we go, back in action. Continuing with what we were just discussing, though, in a home environment, you can really support your kids' ability to self regulate, protect their emotional safety. You can minimize instances where they need to mask. Again, if you're new to the world of neurodivergence, masking is essentially putting on a face or behaving in such a way that is what society expects of you, what the people around you expect of you, what the environment demands, even if that's super uncomfortable or goes very much against your nature. So it might be a kiddo who does not feel comfortable making eye contact, who then forces themselves to because they've been told that's what's expected of them. It could also be something like my kid can hear everything. He can hear the light bulbs in the room. He can hear every single noise that is going on. And so that ability of just sitting there pretending like it isn't grating on your very last nerve is masking. The big key for us to remember is that when our kids are in an environment where they're needing to mask a whole bunch in order to stay on green or get treasure box or whatever it is in school, then the amount of energy and brain power that it takes them to successfully mask zaps all of the energy they have, and they can no longer learn because every ounce of brain power they have is going into doing a thing that's so against their grain. And then when they come home, they're exhausted and they're stressed and they're burnt out because they've been pretending they haven't been listening to a light bulb for 6 hours. And that's why they fall apart when they come home. So when you can remove those things from them, you will be dealing with a very different child. So at home, we can provide an environment where your kiddo feels seen and safe and confident, where they can learn the way that they learn rather than being pushed into this one size fits all model that they are most definitely not a part of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so the next part to this is again, our intention here, we are not trying to blame brick and mortar schools, especially public schools. Typically, they have huge demands, limited resources. It's I'm not sure anyone is like, oh, I would love to be a public school teacher these days. It sounds wonderful. I'm sure I'll be well supported. But we do want to highlight systemic pressures or maybe structural mismatches that can make it harder for neurodiverse learners. Okay, so some of the areas where public schooling often falls short for this neurodiversity affirming education in practice. Again, it's that deficit slash medical diagnosis type model versus a strength based model. So some schools and systems still primarily emphasize what the neurodiverse child can't do. And they focus almost entirely on remediation of these skills, whether or not the kiddo is ever going to thrive or flourish in those skills versus nurturing their way of being in the world. And we see this a lot of times when people have had really bad IEP experiences and things like that, right? It's this focus on like, well, they're not writing well enough and they're not doing this well enough and they're not doing this well enough. And so we're going to take away the fun stuff that they do really well at because we know that they do really well at that. And we're going to spend extra time hammering on these things that they're not very good at. And like no one, okay, literally no one would enjoy that. So why would a kid enjoy that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
at least give me some of the things I enjoy to help me cope with the things that I don't enjoy. Like, if I have to eat this salad that doesn't taste very good, I'm also going to enjoy a chocolate chip cookie. That's my life motto. Like, come on now.
Yeah, because when you've taken away all the stuff that they're good at and just give them the stuff they struggle at, it's like, great, now I can feel like I'm failing and suck at everything all day long because all I'm doing are things that are hard as hell. And it's not to
Mhm.
say that they shouldn't be doing hard things. Everybody needs stretch goals and things like that in life, but it needs to be tailored to the way they function, the way they learn, the way they experience the world. And that's oftentimes where schools fall short. Again, we talked about masking and mental health, the bang up job that that can do. I mean, we have this whole generation now of women our age in particular who are realizing now that they're neurodivergent, and
Mhm.
women, typically speaking, mask better than other genders because it's our societal role is to be people pleasers and to make people happy, especially in our generation. And so there's all these women now who, as their kids are being diagnosed, they're doing the questionnaires and they're like, but that's not weird. I do that all the time. That's just totally normal. And the doctor's like waiting for them to get and be like, you're so close. You're so close. You're going to connect
You
those
almost
dots
got
any
it. Yeah.
second. Right. You know? And then realizing that you've been masking all this time. And it's like, no wonder we're so mentally drained all the time because, yes, this has been happening. Another thing, too, is we are super pro teacher at Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. They have the hardest job and get so little support and so little respect.
Mhm.
We 100% acknowledge that. One example of the ways that art teachers are insufficiently supported is in their ability to work with neurodivergent kids. A lot of times it's the training that they've received, the resources that they have. They, a lot of times, just don't even fully understand some of these diagnoses or the way that they manifest or the way that it plays out and how it affects a kid's learning because they haven't been given those tools. And we're learning new things about neurodivergence all the time, which is why you're getting so many diagnoses now, right? This whole it's being diagnosed like crazy. And I saw something online that was like, oh, why did we discover so many planets after we had discovered telescopes? And it was like, well, gee, what do you think? And it's like, now that we know so much more about neurodivergence, yeah, we can spot it more easily. We can diagnose it better and things like that. But that doesn't mean that teachers going through school or teachers who've been mentored by existing teachers when they did their teacher training and things like that got any of that information or are there. So they are not terribly supported in their environment as much as many of them try so hard to do the best for their students.
No, absolutely. A great specific example of that that I'm fairly well educated on is the difference between the DSM-5 or the medical diagnosis of impairment in written expression versus dysgraphia. So if your kiddo goes through the assessment at the school cannot give a medical DSM type diagnosis of impairment in written expression. They'll just say dysgraphia. And the checkboxes for dysgraphia are work on writing, work on pencil grip, work on fine motor control, work on finger stuff. And they're going to be like, okay, so copy this and do that. But if your kiddo has been diagnosed with an actual DSM diagnosis of impairment in written expression, it could be that their pencil grip is great and that they're a great artist and that they have great finger control and that it's something else neurological that's totally not connected to that. And then the school is going to have them doing things that totally don't work or help for them because again, this is a systemic issue within how the school operates and what they can say and what they can do and what things they can give. And it's not the teacher's fault. These are the things they're allowed to do. These are the things they're supposed to do. These are the things they have to check off. But it doesn't help your kid in any way, shape, or form. Okay. So another one that comes up often that we hear about and see about in groups is attendance, school refusal, just general distress or anxiety around attending school. And look, the reality is neurodiverse kids have higher levels of school distress, refusal, or absenteeism. This is not hard to put two and two together, right? I don't know how many times we've been in groups and we hear parents or see parents talking about how, oh, my kid has a stomach ache and they don't want to go to school and they just need to buck up. Like, no, they have a stomach ache because that's the physical manifestation of their distress, their anxiety about going to school. They are physically ill from the stress of what is happening. And I guarantee that you as an adult have been physically ill about some stress going on in your life at some point. Imagine feeling that way almost every day because you have to go to school. Like, holy smokes. I
And then being
Yeah,
told that it's not real
that's
and
in
then
your
not being
head.
believed on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyone with a chronic illness knows what it's like to be told that it's just in your head. I got sent to a very kind psychiatrist to make sure that it wasn't in my head. It's not a great feeling. Trust your kids. So another area that traditional type schools really oftentimes fail our neurodiverse learners is with their one size fits all curriculum and assessments. So, curriculum, you've got long written assignments, group work, standardized testing, you have just the regular stuff. Some kids need to move faster, some kids need to move slower. And that's just not possible. This idea that in third grade, all third graders are at this level and they all need this much time to learn this skill and they all need this much time to learn the next skill. And that's not realistic. It's not realistic for any kid, but it's especially challenging for those that are wired differently. And then with assessments, it's the same kind of thing. Some kids do fine with written assessments, but some kids would really excel with being able to do an oral presentation or to answer the questions orally, or maybe they need some kind of a chart or a form that they can reference to help them as they're going through it. But if you've not jumped through 1,000,001 hoops, then they don't have it. And then if you have jumped through 1,000,001 hoops and it's time to do the assessment and all the kids pull out their blank paper and your kiddo pulls out the chart, and then now they feel othered because they're
Hmm.
using the tool that they have been allowed. And that's not good for anyone. No one wants to feel like the outsider, especially kids, and especially kids in that kind of environment. So just kind of keeping in mind all of these differences and the fact randomly, actually, my sister-in-law, who does not homeschool, she always talks about how in her work, she does a lot with IEP stuff and how every kid in school should have an IEP because IEP is an individualized education plan and every kid learns differently than the person sitting next to them. And in an ideal world, they would all have a plan tailored to help them excel and achieve the most that they can achieve, whatever that looks like. Public schools, brick and mortar schools, traditional schools, even the online traditional schools, they can't do that for kids because that's not how they're set up. Homeschooling can.
Hmm. Another one that was really big, especially for my oldest kiddo in the public school system, was transition times, unpredictability, sensory transitions, things like that. So, a lot of times, not all the time, neurodivergent learners thrive on predictability or at least knowing what's next. And so, unforeseen changes can be really challenging. So, like every Tuesday, we have art. Well, not this Tuesday because we have a field trip or something like that. And so, you've got some challenges like that. I was just talking to a parent not that long ago who had a whole situation in school, got kicked out of the classroom because the clock in the classroom hadn't been changed for daylight savings time. And so they were doing things at the quote unquote wrong time. And the teacher didn't realize that that was the issue and kicked a kid out of class. But the kiddo was like, we don't do math at 10 o'clock. That's not how this day goes. And was struggling to kind of adjust to that quick change in their mind. For my kiddo, what was even more than that were the frequent transitions. To your point, as far as like elementary school, like no elementary school kid wants more time on this, that, or the other thing. Their blocks are so short in elementary school. It's like 20 minutes on this, 30 minutes on that. I have an extreme introvert who likes to sit and feel things and immerse himself in things and really settle in. And by the time he's almost maybe starting to settle in, they're onto something else. And he's like,
Mm.
I haven't even adjusted to the last thing. And now we're doing another thing. Like, what is going on? And so his whole day was just counting down to the next thing and then quickly being transitioned from one thing to the next way faster than he does. Beyond that, you have other sensory things, loud bells, fluorescent lights. I can't stand fluorescent lights. If my kid was in a classroom that shares a wall with a bathroom, the hand dryers going off all day long would drive him up a wall. And if you don't experience the world in that way, you're not even going to realize it's a thing. And then people wonder why these kids are so stressed and so tired and so anxious and they struggle to focus and all of that. That's why. That's 100% why. You just might not be feeling the same things that they're feeling, so you don't recognize it.
Yep. No, for sure.
Okay, so we're going to talk about more benefits of homeschooling neurodivergent kiddos. But real quick, Amanda kind of mentioned it before. We offer coaching. We offer one-on-one coaching where you can meet with either myself or Amanda. We offer two-on-one coaching where you can come and talk to both of us because we have very different styles and philosophies and approaches. And sometimes you like to take a little from one and a little from the other one and kind of mix it together and come up with your own magical homeschooling blend. But there's a link in our show notes if you'd like to book a session with us. We ask for some information ahead of time so we can super duper prepare and maximize the living daylights out of your time, come with solutions to some of the things that you've listed as your goals for the session, resources, all that good kind of stuff. So yeah, a lot of times you can listen to the podcast and be like, I get all of this in theory. You're nodding along. You're like, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. But then you're like, okay, so if I pull my kid tomorrow, what do I do? And so if you're in that position and you want to talk through what you're going to do, we have a session for that. So come, we would love to help. Again, link in the show notes. Happy to help. Come chat. We can customize everything to your specific needs, your specific child, your specific goals, your place in life, all that good stuff.
I feel like sometimes too, homeschooling is kind of like baking, like making a souffle or even making homemade bread, where you're like, I totally have this. I've watched all the videos, I've read all the blogs, I have got this. And you make it and you put it in the oven and you're like, I am awesome. And it comes out and it falls. And you're
Yeah.
like, what went wrong? Like, I did
Hmm.
everything that the blog said. I did it all. Like, what
Yeah.
went wrong? We can help you figure out what went wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I have a regular recurring session with somebody and they've been homeschooling for a while and I mean, they did their homework, they researched all this stuff, and they're like, it's not going the way I thought it was going to go. We're not living the ideals that I was hoping. And I'm just trying to get it on track. I'm like, okay, let's get it on track. Let's work on it. It's going to be small baby steps and let's do it. We can do this. So, yeah, come, we
I
can
mean,
help.
that's it. It is so helpful to have someone to talk to on the regular. And it might be, you might get everything you need from your local co-op group or, your local group of homeschool moms. But it might be that you need someone else who isn't actually quite so invested in you, right? And like they don't know you and your kiddo so much and they're not bringing quite so many other things in. Someone from the outside who can kind of be like, "Well, have you thought about this? Did you ask this?" I could go off on a tangent, get on my soapbox about how important like therapy is and outside perspective, but it's the same coaching in all areas of your life. And so we're happy to help with homeschooling.
Hmm.
All right. So we are going to talk about the benefits of homeschooling for neurodiverse kids. Clearly, if you've been listening to this episode or to our podcast in general, you know that we think this is a pretty good idea. And we've touched on it many times, but again, it's that idea, like the personalized pace and learner centered choice. Homeschooling just allows the caregiver and the kiddo to tailor the pace. You can skip as much as you need. You can revisit as often as needed. You can accommodate attention fluctuations, or you can do interest led deep dives as much as you want. And you can turn that into an entire unit study, or you can take a week or two off of your regular stuff and just enjoy learning this one very specific niche thing that your kiddo loves because you want to see your kiddo light up around that and you want them to know that you're listening to them. These are things you can do homeschooling that a brick and mortar school is not going to be able to do.
Hmm. Absolutely. You can create the environment that we've been talking about as far as a calmer environment. You can build in movement breaks. As Amanda said, you can focus on interests. You can build the environment that meets your kids' sensory needs, their emotional needs, and help them regulate, which is spot on.
Absolutely. But you can make sure that you're doing a strengths based type of education at home. So the focus and engagement, this idea that homeschooling can really integrate a child's specific interests, whether that's the animals or puzzles or tech or gaming or whatever it is, into their learning so that you can just tap into their motivation, what it is that lights them up, that makes them want to learn instead of you or an outside teacher forcing the learning.
Hmm. Absolutely. And all of that just creates an environment that is so much less stressful. So it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, where you're thinking, like, I can't believe you want me to spend 24/7 with this kid when the reality is, I deal with them right now from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. and I'm freaking exhausted from just those 6 hours. But when you create this environment where they're not so stressed, it doesn't then add more work for you. I mean, it's going to be work. Don't get me wrong. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but like, I'm not like the days just fly by, right? I mean, it is work to educate your children, but it shouldn't be as stressful. Your fight or flight shouldn't be activated all day long from dealing with your kid because their fight or flight isn't activated. And then it's not spilling over onto you. So it really should create a much smoother environment. Again, not on day one. There was a lady the other day in one of the ADHD groups that I'm in, and she asked about homeschooling. And some lady replied and was like, terrible idea. You should not homeschool. Your kid's going to get depressed. It's this, it's that, it's the other. I replied, I go, have you homeschooled? Because so many people that have never homeschooled, have an opinion about homeschooling. She's like, I did. It was the worst 2 months of my life. And I was like, you're giving people advice after you've homeschooled for 2 months? I'm like, please stop talking. Just please. I literally said to her in the comments, sorry, I made Amanda laugh and now she's like coughing up a lung. Sorry. I said to her in the comments, I said, that would literally be like, okay, with no preparation or research, I decided to move to China. I spent 2 months there. It sucked. It was awful. I've already moved back to the United States. China sucks. Never go there. And I'm like, you can't just like flip your entire life upside down and then within 2 months be like, it's not working, right? I couldn't. I was like, please stop giving people advice. You should not be talking about homeschooling. Right?
Oh man. Oh man. These are the moments where I'm like, I hate people. I hate people. Which I'm like, I'm such a people person and I'm so extroverted, but yeah, those moments. Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Well, kind of along that same note, if you are homeschooling, you get to tailor socialization and community and make sure that it's more meaningful. One of the most common concerns that we hear all the time, we've done podcasts on it, we address it all of the time, is that homeschool kids miss out on socialization. Okay. For neurodiverse children, the alternative can be much more intentional social opportunities, and not only intentional, but more meaningful. And, that you can do small group projects, you can do interest-based clubs, mixed age communities. Ideally, across the board, it's going to be more inclusive groups where there's going to be less bullying. There's going to be less required masking because you're able to intentionally find groups that are providing this tailored socialization where your kiddo is just accepted for who they are, whether it's because they are on a gender creative spectrum or they don't like loud noises and their other friends understand that, or they need more time, or maybe they tend to have more meltdowns, but they're just going to have this group of friends who are like, it's okay, we got you. I could go on, but we're trying not to make this a 14-hour podcast. So just keep in mind, you absolutely can and will have socialization for your differently wired kiddo, but it can be really positive socialization that weeds out the vast, vast majority of the bullying that's happening these days. And that is a huge problem in brick and mortar schools these days.
Well, and I'm in, again, so many Facebook groups for parents of neurodivergent kids because I have 3 of them. The number of posts that I see where parents send out birthday party invitations and don't get a single RSVP for their kid to have friends at a birthday party. Like, how much socialization are these kids getting in school when you can't rustle up 2 friends to have a birthday party? They don't have friends at school, if that's the case. They have kids they see all day long, but they're not on the in with these kids if they're not coming to birthday parties. They're just seeing these kids, and your kid, whether they can put their finger on it and speak words to it or not, knows they're not in with the other kids. They know they're different. It goes back to that stupid, crazy, and lazy from the beginning from Jonathan Mooney's book. Okay, we're over, but I have to say, do you watch that guy Subway Takes? Do you watch him
I
on
do
Instagram?
sometimes, yeah.
Okay. He has one, it's quite popular, so it plays quite often. But it was this guy. So if you've not seen Subway Takes before, it started on the New York City subway, but now he'll go to other countries and ride the metro in their country and stuff like that. Sometimes he's on the bus or the ferry or whatever. And so he goes, what's your take? And somebody says something and he says he either agrees or disagrees. And then the person kind of like defends their statement. And so this one guy one time says, I think we should stop calling out people's diagnoses and neurodivergence. And the guy says 100% disagree. Why would we do that? And he's like, yeah, but it's like such a white culture thing. He goes, like, in other cultures, you would never do that. So he's like, I'm Hispanic. And like, we would just say like, hey, that's Jose. He likes to sweep. Let him do his thing. He's like, we don't say he's autistic, And then the guy who hosts the show is like, yeah, he's like, I'm Arab. And he's like, we just go, he's like, like he's, yeah, like, and it was hilarious. Like the way they kind of did it, like this is Rocco. He's good at math, like they just kind of leave it. He's like, I don't think we should be calling it out. It was a really funny conversation. I quite liked it, but yeah. Lastly, in this section, the things that we can give our kids at home are just kind of this empowerment and this agency over their learning to understand that the way they experience the world, the way they learn is not wrong and it's not weird and they're not in the margins, that they are just as valid as everyone else. And that helps them to build confidence to advocate for themselves when they need something. I mean, I have a kiddo who's like, I have no problem, like you said about bullying. He will walk into any space wearing noise canceling headphones. Any space. He
Mm.
doesn't give a shit what you think because he's comfortable with his identity and he's been in an environment where that's okay and that's supportive. And so at this point, he's like, if anybody else has a problem with it, that's a them problem. But it's so important for our kids to know that their way of learning matters and that we will adapt to the way that they need to learn or the way that their environment needs to be set up so that they can experience the world in a less stressful way, in a more affirming way, instead of us requiring them to flex to a very rigid system, which is a lot of work to put on a small kiddo. It's just too much.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to run through a list of some really specific, practical kind of like what you can do in a homeschool environment, tips or ideas. This whole episode has been full of some things. Hopefully you've gotten some ideas from it. But these are just some really, if you're the kind of person that needs concrete examples instead of teasing things out from a conversation, here are some. So you can design a flexible daily rhythm. So allow for movement, focus, interest-based tasks. Again, daily rhythms can be very important for a lot of neurodiverse learners, but it is important that it be flexible as well, because as soon as you have a rigid schedule, when the tiniest little thing knocks it off course, it's not going to be a tiny little thing anymore. Integrate multimodal learning. Okay. Again, this is that idea that kids often need more than one way to learn, and making sure that you're including all the different ways, whatever works best for your kiddo, and understanding that one thing might work well in one subject and another thing might work better in a different subject, and being flexible with that. So that's whether that's reading or auditory or hands-on or technology or being out in nature, right? It all it all varies, and it's going to be a mix, but paying attention to that and tailoring it to your specific kiddo.
Well, can I
Build
just interject
Oh,
real
yeah.
quick too? Because I meant to say it earlier when you were talking about how schools are a one size fits all model. We have an episode that's a super popular episode called The Truth About All in One Homeschool Platforms or All in One Homeschool Options or something like that. It's super important what you're just saying, right? That you have to tailor all these different things. So pulling them out of a school system that is a one size fits all to plop them on time for learning is not solving your problems. I mean, it might be solving some of the social things or some of the other things, but it's not fully solving your problems. So if that's your first thought listening to this, go listen to that other episode before you sign up for anything, please, or buy a box of curriculum or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so some other things to make sure that you're focusing on: build routines that teach self regulation and executive functioning. This is something that you can really work on if you're homeschooling. These can be things like making sure that you're checking in with your kiddos on a regular basis. How's it going? What do you need help with? What can I help with? How can we do that? Making those plans together so that you're scaffolding for them to eventually be able to do it on their own. Other things, tools like visual timers, again, breaks, things like making sure that you remember to plan a snack so that you're not hangry, movement breaks, time for reflection. All of those things can be really important. Advocate for your kiddos' needs at home as well as when you're interacting with other services. So if you are doing therapy or tutoring, or your kiddo is in a sports team or whatever it is, make sure that you, as the caregiver, as the adult, are advocating for your child's needs, and that you're including them in that advocating so that they are learning how you do it. And then you can slowly start working on transitioning that over so that they can advocate for themselves as they get older. Remember, if you're using a curriculum, or even if you're just using random worksheets or workbooks, you get to decide how to use it. You might do a few of the questions. You might do all of the questions and then need to add more questions to make sure your kiddo understands. You might skip units or some sections entirely if your kiddo has already shown mastery. Whatever that looks like, just because you're using something that has already been put together by someone else, it does not mean that you have to use every single page the way that they put it together. You're homeschooling. You get to do what works for your kiddo.
Mhm.
And then the last one that I would really push and put out there that is so important, and you have to work on it day in and day out, is a growth mindset. It's kind of a buzzy, jargony word, I know that, but at the end of the day, you just wanna make sure that you're celebrating progress, little progress, steps forward, it does not matter, big or small, celebrate the progress. Recognize that difference is not deficit, and then just really nurture confidence and self expression and their own identity. For any kiddo to be able to just have the confidence to show up in the world as the person that they are and to be confident that they are enough is one of the best things that we can give to our kiddos. And for kiddos who are differently wired, need a little bit more help with making sure that they are confident in that area. So just kind of day in and day out, just keep working on that.
They need that extra confidence too because they know they're different.
Mhm.
So there's parents who hide their kids' diagnoses from them. There's parents who don't feel the need to get a diagnosis because they're like, oh, we'll just work around it. But they know they're different. And so
Yeah.
having that information becomes super duper helpful because otherwise it can create some real issues. I was listening. If you're watching on video, it didn't look like I was listening, but I was totally clocking
Mm.
what you were saying. But Uber Eats showed up and the dog went bananas. And so, yeah, but I'm back. We're good. Yeah. So just to kind of wrap up, right? Homeschooling is not a magic bullet. It's going to be work. We're not saying like you're going to pull them out of school and tomorrow everything's going to be amazing. It's going to be work. You're going to need support. I would highly recommend taking one of our courses, signing up for a coaching session, doing something else, and really customizing the journey beyond this broader context that we've been talking about here. In our courses, you have a workbook where you specifically outline your homeschool journey that's individual to you. Makes all the difference in the world. But it is going to take time and energy and resources and support. And so it can be challenging, right? We're not saying homeschooling is easy, but in the case of a lot of neurodivergent kids, it's the less stressful alternative a lot of times for both you and your kid. And it is oftentimes much more affirming to who your child is as an individual and as a person. So the time and energy that you spend on developing your homeschool world and day in and day out doing the homeschool thing, totally time well spent most of the time. Yeah. So next is the availability of homeschooling and effective neurodivergent affirming homeschooling can really depend heavily on resources, community, local laws. Sometimes you're able to still get support through your school system for things like speech and stuff like that. Sometimes you're not. It's going to vary a whole bunch. Sometimes co-ops in your area are going to understand that your kid flaps when they get excited more so than other co-ops. And that's unfortunate. You might be able to bring people into the fold and educate them a little bit, or you might struggle to find a co-op where people are willing to let your kid flap when they're excited. And that sucks. And I send you a hug if you're a hugger. And if you're not a hugger, I'll send you a high five or a fist bump. The other thing is that neurodivergent children can and do vary enormously. The number of posts
Yeah.
that I see that are like, what curriculum are you using for your ADHD child? I have 3 ADHD children, and none of them do the same thing for school at all. They all learn completely different. They have different interests, they have different preferences, different learning styles, different schedules. So just be aware when you go into a homeschool group, and just because you're in a homeschool group on Facebook for parents of autistic kiddos, if you ask for programs and advice and people give you like 4 options, there's absolutely no guarantee that those 4 options, any of those 4 options, are going to work for your kids. Just because something works for someone else doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. The one size fits all thing is super duper true. And it applies not only from the public school system or the traditional school system to homeschooling, but then also within the world of homeschooling, it applies that every single one of these kids is different, even within your own family. If you have multiple children, that they will most likely learn differently. So that ability to really define all of those things, like I was mentioning in our Homeschool 101 course, and then to be able to evaluate curriculum against those needs, those goals, those learning styles, those philosophies, that's where your key to success is. Amanda does a whole course on how to evaluate curriculum, how she looks at it, what options are out there, all that kind of stuff that is so much more helpful than just grabbing stuff out of the comments section on Facebook and being like, well, try this, we'll try that, we'll try this. Well, there goes $400. Well, there goes $200. Wow, my kids are really stressed because we keep changing homeschool programs every other week. It's just not ideal. So there's a better way.
Yeah, there is. And again, it's that thing. we've said it over and over in this episode. Homeschooling isn't necessarily going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And you will have good, easy days. You just, yeah, it'll be better than what you had. If you take your time and you implement some of these things, it will be better than what you had. And that's all we can ask for in life, right? As a person with chronic illness, I just want better than what I had. I just want the next
Hmm.
day to be better than the last. Okay, so we have a mantra for you. We try to end every episode with a mantra. But before we get to that, just a quick reminder, if you actually enjoy listening to us, please give us a like and or a follow, whatever it is, wherever you're listening or watching. It's just one of those things. We're not attention whores, I promise. But the likes and the follows, they feed into the algorithm and it helps keep us kind of in the shows that get shown to people, and it keeps us up there when people are searching progressive or secular or homeschoolers and things like that. It just helps us get to more people without us having to pay a bunch of money for advertising and then inviting all of the conservative jerks to come and be like, these people are awful, they're going to hell, 1 star, which we have plenty of those and you can't remove them when they do that. So please give us a like and a follow if you actually enjoyed any of it. And if you have a chance, I know a lot of the platforms don't allow you to leave a review, but if you have a chance to leave a review, please do.
I
Okay,
blocked one of
so
those people on our social media the other day, by the way, that was like, enough with your bullshit. And I was like, enough with your bullshit. Blocked.
yeah, social media is nice for that because you can actually block them. And YouTube, you can also,
Hmm.
when they're coming on and being really obnoxious. But the podcast places like, I don't know, Spotify and Apple or iTunes or whatever it is, and even like on Amazon and Audible, like they get to say and do what they want, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. It's like just those reviews where you're like, yay, clearly we weren't your intended audience, and yet you still came and had to give your 2 cents.
And I
Fantastic.
think it's on Spotify. You have to listen to like a set amount of time before it allows you to leave a review. So I guess like the silver lining is we really got to piss them off for a decent amount of time before they left a 1 star review. They
Yeah.
had to listen to us affirm that trans lives matter and that women should have
Yeah.
autonomy over their bodies like multiple times before they got to leave us a
Yeah.
review. So who's winning now?
Yeah. There is that. At least we really got to get under their skin for that 1 star review. Okay. So, our mantra for the week: if the system isn't built with your kiddo in mind, that isn't a reflection on your kiddo. It's a reminder that you're allowed to build something better for them.
Yes. And I mean, I know your kiddo never really did the public school thing and all that. Mine did. And let me tell you, we've been home for 10 years now. It is so much better. It is just so much better. So it's scary. And I remember the beginning and I felt like I was jumping off a cliff without a parachute, but it is so much better and you can do it. And we are happy to help. So check the show notes. There's a boatload of resources down there for you that can get you up and running and feeling confident and ready to take the leap. If you're not started homeschooling yet, or if you're already homeschooling and you just need some refresher or you're struggling, there's tons of resources for that too. So come join us. We would love to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, in the meantime, happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.